I gave my heart, my loyalty, and even my future to the one person I believed would never betray me. But the day I found out he was secretly building anew with someone else, I realized my greatest love story was nothing but my greatest mistake. I was at Jake's company party when I first let another man's hands linger too long on my waist. My husband of 4 years was across the room, laughing with his coworkers, completely oblivious to the way Marcus was looking at me like I was the only woman in the world. I should have stepped away. Instead, I leaned closer when he whispered a joke in my ear, my wedding ring catching the light as I touched his arm, and laughed like he was the funniest man alive. The guilt hit me on the drive home, but it felt distant, theoretical. Jake was scrolling through his phone in the passenger seat, barely acknowledging my existence. When was the last time he'd looked at me the way Marcus had? When was the last time he'd made me feel beautiful instead of just, ooh there? Good party, I said, testing the waters. He replied without looking. That night I stared at the ceiling while Jake snored beside me, and I replayed every moment of Marcus's attention. The way he'd asked about my writing. The way he'd remembered details from conversations weeks ago. The way he'd made me feel seen in a way my own husband hadn't in months. I told it was harmless. A little flirtation, never anyone, right? I was still going home to my marriage, still wearing my ring, still playing the part of the devoted wife. What Jake didn't know couldn't him. But I started looking forward to company events in a way that should have been my first warning sign. Marcus began texting me about work things. Innocent at first. Project updates, funny memes from the office, questions about reports that could have easily been answered with a quick email to the team. But his messages came at night, when I was lying in bed next to Jake, and they made me smile in the darkness. Working late again, Marcus texted one Thursday night. Always, I replied even though I was already in my pajamas. Same. This job is going to us both. Want to grab coffee tomorrow morning? I found this place that supposedly has the best pastries in the city. I stared at the message for 10 minutes before typing back. That sounds perfect. Jake didn't even notice when I left an hour early the next morning, dressed in the blue dress he used to say was his favorite. He was already buried in his laptop, coffee growing cold beside him, the same routine we'd fallen into somewhere between year 2 and year 3 of marriage. The coffee shop was small and intimate, with mismatched chairs and local art covering the walls. Marcus was already there when I arrived, having ordered my usual without having to ask. He remembered I liked oat milk. He remembered I avoided sugar but couldn't resist their chocolate croissants. Look beautiful, he said as I sat down, and I felt something inside me that had been sleeping for months suddenly wake. We talked for 2 hours. About books, about dreams we'd given on, about the versions of ourselves we used to be before got in the way. He told me about his divorce, how he'd married too young and grown into different people. I found talking about my writing, the novel I'd been working on for 3 years but never seemed to finish. Should let me read it, he said. It's not good enough yet. I replied automatically. It's better than think, or harder on than anyone else would ever be. The way he looked at me when he said it made my chest tight. When was the last time Jake had expressed interest in my writing? When was the last time he'd encouraged me instead of just nodding absently when I mentioned it? I should go, I said, glancing at my phone. We'd been there so long that lunch hour was approaching. Of course, thank for this. I really needed it. Me too. He walked me to my car, and when he hugged me goodbye, I held on a second too long. Long enough to breathe in his cologne. Long enough to remember what it felt like to be wanted. I drove back to the office with my heart racing and my phone buzzing with a text from Jakey, working late tonight. Don't wait. The pattern started innocently enough. Coffee became lunch. Lunch became drinks after work. Drinks became long conversations in his car because neither of us wanted the evening to end. I was careful. I never lied about where I was going. Just omitted details. Meeting a friend. Grabbing dinner. Running errands. Jake never asked for specifics. He was too buried in his own work, his own world, to notice that his wife was slowly disappearing into someone else's. The first time we were sitting in his car outside my favorite restaurant. We'd just finished dinner and were talking about the movie we'd seen, and he reached over to brush a strand of hair from my face. The gesture was so gentle, so intimate, that I forgot how to breathe. I shouldn't be doing this, he whispered. I know, I whispered back, but neither of us moved away. His hand was still in my hair and I was leaning into his touch like a flower turning toward the sun. When his lips met mine, it felt like coming home and falling apart all at the same time. I cried the entire drive home. Not because I regretted it, but because I didn't. Because it had felt more real than anything I'd experienced in years. Because I was already planning when I could see him again. Jake was asleep when I got home, and I stood in our bathroom staring at my reflection. My lips were still swollen from Marcus's kisses. My hair was messed from his fingers. I looked like a woman who'd been thoroughly loved by someone who wasn't her husband. I looked alive for the first time in years. The affair progressed quickly after that. Stolen afternoons in hotel rooms, long lunches that stretched into evening, weekend trips when Jake was traveling for work. I became an expert at covering my tracks, at living 2 separate lives with the skill of a professional spy. Marcus made me feel things I'd forgotten I could feel. He listened when I talked. He asked questions about my thoughts, my dreams, my fears. He made love to me like I was precious, like every touch mattered, like he couldn't get enough of me. Leave him. He started saying during our 3rd month together. We could have this every day. We could build something real. It's complicated, I'd reply, even though it wasn't. Not really, I was just scared. Scared of scared of Jake. Scared of admitting that I'd become the kind of woman I used to judge. As it, or just afraid. He wasn't wrong. I was terrified. But I was also addicted to the double. To having Jake's stability and Marcus's passion. Her to being the wife who had dinner ready when her husband came home and the mistress who sent sultry photos in the middle of business meetings. I thought I could have it all. I thought I was smart enough to manage it forever. I was wrong about everything. The morning my exploded started like any other. Jake left for his business trip to Chicago with a distracted kiss on my forehead and a mumbled "See Sunday." I was already planning my weekend with Marcus, scrolling through hotels on my phone while I drank my coffee. Marcus had been pushing harder lately for me to leave Jake. The conversations were getting more intense, more desperate. He'd started talking about the future like it was a given. Our future. The apartment we'd get together, the trips we'd take, the we'd build without the secrecy, without the guilt. I can't keep sharing, he'd said just 2 nights before, his hands tangled in my hair as we lay in yet another anonymous hotel room. It's me, just a little more time. I'd whispered against his chest. I need to figure out the right way to do this. But the truth was I wasn't sure I wanted to do it at all. Jake might not have been passionate, but he was safe. Predictable. He'd never left dirty dishes in the sink or forgotten to pay bills. He'd never made me question whether I was enough, because he barely seemed to notice me at all. The affair with Marcus was intoxicating, but it was also exhausting. The constant lying, the perpetual guilt. The way my heart raced every time my phone buzzed with a text from either of them. Part of me wondered if what I was really addicted to wasn't Marcus himself but the chaos of it all. Saturday morning, I was supposed to meet Marcus at our usual hotel. I'd told Jake I was spending the weekend at my sister's, even though Sarah lived 3 states away and would never provide an alibi if asked. The lie felt automatic now, as natural as breathing. I was putting on the red lingerie Marcus had bought me, admiring in the full-length mirror in our bedroom when I heard the front door open. Jake's voice carried the stairs. "Honey, I'm home early. The client canceled." My turn to ice. I was standing in our marital bedroom wearing another man's gift, my phone buzzing with texts from Marcus asking where I was. The hotel keycard was sitting on the dresser next to my wedding rings, which I'd started removing for my afternoons with Marcus because wearing them while I betrayed my vows felt too hypocritical even for me. "Just a minute." I called, my voice cracking. I scrambled to get dressed, shoving the lingerie into the back of my underwear drawer, sliding my rings back onto my finger with hands that wouldn't stop shaking. But I wasn't fast enough. Jake appeared in the doorway just as I was smoothing down my hair, my cheeks flushed and my breathing uneven. He took in the scene, my nice clothes, my carefully applied makeup, the fact that I clearly hadn't been planning to spend the day at home, going somewhere. He asked, and for the first time in months he was really looking at me. "Sarah's," I lied, the word sticking in my throat. "Remember, I told I was spending the weekend there." "Funny thing," he said, his voice strangely calm. "I called Sarah yesterday to ask if tickets to that show she mentioned. She said she hadn't talked to in 3 weeks. The silence stretched between us like a chasm. I could hear my phone buzzing in my purse downstairs. Marcus, probably, wondering why I wasn't at the hotel yet. The sound felt deafening. "Jake, I can explain." "Ken, because I've been trying to figure out for months why my wife has become a stranger. Why she leaves for hours without saying where she's going. Why she started wearing perfume I didn't buy her and lingerie that's never made an appearance in our bedroom." He stepped closer, and I could see the pain in his eyes. This wasn't the distracted, work-obsessed Jake I'd grown used to. This was the man I'd married, the one who'd noticed everything about me in the beginning. "How long?" he asked quietly. "How long what? Don't. Please don't make this worse by pretending don't know what I'm asking." I sank onto the bed, my legs unable to hold me anymore. 6 months. The number hung in the air like a sentence. Jake's face went through a series of expressions, anger, disgust, before settling into something worse than all of them, indifference. "Is it someone I know?" I nodded, unable to speak. "Marcus, from the company parties." It wasn't a question. He'd figured it out. Maybe he'd known longer than I'd thought. Maybe all those late nights at work had been him trying to avoid coming home to a wife he knew was betraying him. "Jake, I'm so sorry. I never meant for it to happen. It just happened. Like accidentally tripped and fell into bed with another man for 6 months." His voice was getting louder, angrier, and I deserved every word. But hearing it out loud, hearing the reality of what I'd done reflected back at me, made it real in a way it had never been before. I felt invisible, I whispered with. I felt like I didn't matter. "So decided to our marriage instead of talking to me?" "I tried to talk to." "We're always working, always distracted. When was the last time asked me how my day was? When was the last time touched me without it being perfunctory? When was the last time gave me a chance to? I've been emotionally checked out for months. Now I know why. He was right. I had checked out. I'd stopped trying with Jake the moment Marcus made me feel wanted. I'd used Jake's emotional distance to justify my affair instead of fighting for our marriage. In love with him?" Jake asked. The question hit me like a physical. Was I? I thought I was. In the hotel rooms and stolen moments it had felt like love. But sitting here watching my husband's heartbreak in real time, I wasn't sure what I felt anymore. "I don't know," I said honestly. "Bag," he said quietly. "What?" "Pack a bag and leave. Stay with sister, stay with him, stay in a hotel. I don't care, but I can't look it right now. Jake, please. We can work through this. We can go to counseling. We can what? Pretend this didn't happen. Pretend my wife didn't spend 6 months lying to my face while she another man." I flinched at the crudeness of it, but he wasn't wrong. That's exactly what I'd done. "I need time to think," he continued. "And I need gone while I do it." I packed a bag with shaking hands while Jake sat downstairs in silence. I could hear him making phone calls. To his brother, probably. Maybe to a lawyer. The reality of what I'd set in motion was starting to hit me, and I felt like I was drowning. As I carried my suitcase down the stairs, Jake didn't look from his laptop. "I'll be staying at the Marriott downtown," I said. "I don't care where stay. My phone will be on if want to talk." "I won't." I stood there for another moment, waiting for something. An opening. A sign that the man I'd married was still in there somewhere, still willing to for us. But Jake had gone back to his screen, dismissing me the way he'd dismissed everything else in our marriage. The difference was, this time I deserved it. I drove to the hotel where Marcus was waiting, but not to meet him. I sat in the parking lot and called him instead. "Where?" "He knows," I said simply. Silence on the other end. "Then what happened?" I told him everything. About Jake coming home early, about the confrontation, about the bag in my back seat and the hotel room I'd just booked for. "This is good," Marcus said finally. "I know it doesn't feel like it, but this is what had to happen. Now we can be together for real, can we? Is that what this is?" "What do you mean?" "I mean, is this love, Marcus? Or is it just an addiction to the drama, to the secrecy?" Another pause. "Are having second thoughts. I'm having all the thoughts. My marriage is over. My husband hates me. And I don't even know if what we have is real outside of hotel rooms and stolen afternoons." "Come upstairs," he said. "We'll figure it out together." But I didn't go upstairs. I drove to the Marriott and checked into a room where I spent the night staring at the ceiling and wondering how I'd managed to destroy everything I'd ever wanted in pursuit of something I wasn't even sure I actually wanted at all. The divorce papers arrived on a Tuesday, delivered by a courier while I was eating cereal from the box in my studio apartment. 3 months had passed since Jake kicked me out, and I was living in a 600 square foot space that smelled like the curry from the restaurant downstairs and cost twice what our mortgage had been. Jake hadn't spoken to me once since that day. All communication went through lawyers. He wanted the house, the car, and half of everything else. I didn't him on any of it. What was the point? I destroyed our together. The least I could do was let him keep the pieces. Marcus had been patient at first. Supportive. He helped me move into the apartment, brought me groceries, held me while I cried about the mess I'd made. For about 6 weeks, it felt like maybe we could build something real from the ashes of my marriage. But without the forbidden aspect, without the secrecy and the stolen moments, our relationship felt different. Ordinary. When I was with Marcus every day instead of just for clandestine afternoons, I started noticing things I'd overlooked before. The way he left dishes in the sink. The way he interrupted me when I was talking. The way he seemed to expect me to be grateful he'd chosen me over his wife. Wait, his wife. That bombshell dropped on a Thursday night when his phone buzzed during dinner and he went white as a sheet. "Who is it?" I asked. "Nobody," he said. But his hands were shaking as he declined the call. The phone rang again immediately. This time he answered. "Hey Linda, no, I'm just working late again. I'll be home soon." I froze. I watched him lie to his wife with the same casual ease I'd once lied to Jake, and suddenly I understood exactly what I was. I wasn't the love of his. I wasn't the woman he was going to build a future with. I was just the other woman. Again. When he hung, I was already putting on my coat. "Where are going?" he'd ask. "We're married." "Separated," he said quickly. "I told that from the beginning. Told me we're divorced. There's a difference. The papers are being finalized. It's just a technicality. Does she know about me?" His silence was answer enough. Jesus Christ. Marcus. I destroyed my marriage for this. For another affair. It's not the same thing, isn't it? Or lying to her and sneaking around to be with me. How is that any different from what we were doing when I was married? "Because I love," he said desperately. "What Linda and I have has been over for years." That's what I told about Jake too. Right until I realized I'd never actually tried to save my marriage. I just used his emotional distance as an excuse to do what I wanted to do. I left that night and never went back. Marcus called and texted for weeks, but I was done. I'd finally learned the difference between love and selfishness, and everything I'd felt for him had been the latter. The real consequences started showing after that. Our affair had become office gossip, which meant I had to find a new job. But word travels fast in professional circles, especially when the woman who broke a marriage. 3 interviews ended abruptly when they Googled my name and found the social media posts Jake's friends had made. Turns out, the wronged husband gets a lot more sympathy than the cheating wife. I finally found work at a small marketing firm that didn't do background checks, making half what I'd made before. My friends, most of whom had been our friends as a couple, chose sides. Jake got them all. I couldn't even blame them. Who wants to associate with the woman who away a good man for some in drama? The worst part was the loneliness. I thought I was lonely in my marriage, but that had been nothing compared to this. At least then I'd had Jake's steady presence, his predictable routines, the comfort of being part of a unit. Now I was just alone. Truly, completely alone. I tried dating apps, but men weren't exactly lining to date the woman whose affair had become local gossip. The few dates I went on ended badly when they Googled me or when I made the mistake of being honest about my past. Turns out, I cheated on my husband for 6 months isn't a great icebreaker. 6 months after the divorce was finalized, I ran into Jake at the grocery store. He was with a woman I didn't recognize, someone pretty and blonde and young. She was laughing at something he'd said, touching his arm the way I used to touch Marcus's. Jake looked happier than I'd seen him in years. He saw me before I could escape down another aisle. For a moment we just stared at each other across the produce section. Then he nodded once, a brief acknowledgement of my existence, and turned back to his companion. I left my cart in the middle of the store and cried in my car for an hour. That night I found scrolling through social media, looking at the Jake was rebuilding without me. The woman was named Amy, and she seemed perfect. She posted pictures of books she was reading, hikes she was taking, meals she was cooking. She looked at Jake the way I'd looked at Marcus, Like he hung the moon. The comments on their photos were full of support from our old friends. Deserve this happiness. So glad found someone who appreciates. Jake is the best guy ever. None of them were wrong. Jake was the best guy ever. He'd been loyal, steady, dependable. He'd worked hard to provide for us. Even if he'd gotten lost in that work along the way. He deserved a wife who would for their marriage instead of running straight into another man's arms at the first sign of trouble. I closed the laptop and looked around my tiny apartment, at the stack of unpaid bills on the counter. At the book I'd been trying to write for 4 years but couldn't finish because every time I sat down to work on it, I thought about Marcus asking to read it and felt sick. At the silence that had become my constant companion. This was my now. This was what I'd traded my marriage for. Not love, not passion, not happiness. Just emptiness dressed as freedom. I thought about texting Jake sometimes, apologizing properly, asking if we could talk, begging for forgiveness I didn't deserve. But what would be the point? He'd moved on. He'd found someone who could love him the way he deserved to be loved. Someone who wouldn't throw it all away the moment another man paid her attention. My phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. Even now, a year later, he still reached out occasionally. Thinking of it said, "Hope you're doing well." I deleted it without responding the way I always did. Marcus had eventually left his wife, I'd heard through mutual acquaintances. The divorce had been messy and expensive. His kids barely spoke to him anymore. He'd gotten exactly what he deserved, just like I had. The cruel irony was that I'd finally learned how to be alone, how to sit with my thoughts and feelings without running toward someone else for validation. I'd learned to cook to enjoy my own company, to find meaning in small daily rituals. I'd become the kind of person who might have been able to save my marriage if I'd done the work while I still had one to save. But it was too late for that now. It was too late for a lot of things. I poured a glass of and sat on my tiny balcony, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of pink and gold. Somewhere across town, Jake was probably making dinner with Amy, planning their weekend, building the I'd thrown away. Somewhere else, Marcus was probably wondering why love always felt so complicated, never understanding that what we'd had wasn't love at all. And here I was, finally understanding the difference between wanting someone and loving them, between passion and partnership, between the thrill of the new and the depth of the known. I'd learned all these lessons at the exact moment they could no longer do me any good. The sun disappeared behind the buildings, leaving me sitting in darkness. I thought about going inside, turning on the lights, pretending I had somewhere to be or someone to call. Instead I sat there in the dark, accepting the silence I'd earned. People always say that everything happens for a reason, that every ending is a new beginning. But sometimes make choices that don't lead anywhere except to exactly where deserve to be, watching other people live the could have had, knowing have no one to blame but. I'd wanted to feel alive, to feel desired, to feel like I mattered. Instead, I'd learned that the cost of feeling everything is risking losing everything that actually matters. And sometimes, when roll those dice, lose it all. The tasted bitter, but I finished it anyway. Because that's what do when living with consequences. Swallow them down and try to make peace with the aftertaste.